Just a reminder that this meeting is being recorded. And that's helpful because then you can all watch it later or send it along to people. I know we had a lot of people who wanted the link for the WUI discussion that we had. And so just a reminder that that is online. So if you wanted to send that discussion out to other people, or if you have anyone interested in watching the city council meeting about the WUI or fire code updates, that's also on the city's YouTube channel from the city council meeting. And that can be really helpful for people. There's a lot of good visuals in the PowerPoint. Just a reminder. All right. So quickly, I have a few updates. We have some colleagues from the utilities and public works departments who are going to be here talking about some updates on things you've already heard about: engineering standards, sewer lateral. I wanted to highlight some upcoming council items that would be of interest to all of you. But we'll start with the renter protection study session. So I mentioned this briefly at one of the last meetings. The city council put on the community development department's work plan item in consultation with staff, a study session on renter protections. This is part of one of the major city goals related to housing. And so in late October, we had a study session on that. It's based on the memo that came out last year from community development and the city attorney's office that outlines what are the existing state laws related to renter protections, and then what are the rules or programs or policy changes that can happen locally and to what units, because there are state laws that regulate what units cities can regulate further than state law, if that makes sense. We also had in the staff report a lot of what I think is interesting, just contextual data about housing units in the city population, renter population statistics. And so it was an interesting discussion. Highly recommend reading the staff report if you have not. There's just a lot of interesting information in there. And generally the direction to staff was to move forward and hold the study session that would be specifically on rental registries, and that will be in February. And so one of the kind of key points that was noted in this first study session was that the city lacks a lot of clear data on the rental housing market. We don't know where the units are, exactly how many there are, how many landlords there are, who owns what units. So they'd like to talk further about a rental registry. They'd like us to try to figure out how to get more information on substandard housing when we do get complaints from tenants. So kind of dissecting which complaints are more minor in nature, like this window doesn't work the way it should, and which are more major, like someone is sleeping in an unsafe situation or in a converted garage without safety features. So trying to understand like what is the intensity of the housing issues we're seeing, to integrate some actions and changes into our existing processes. So we're going to be looking at our business license process, where if you're a landlord, you need to be getting a business license, and seeing if we can gather more information through that existing process already, like asking what are the addresses of your units, how many units are in each building, and using that as a kind of mini registry. Also potentially handing out, a safe housing checklist with the business license forms. So when landlords do register their units, they have a checklist of things that they know they need to provide to meet minimum safety requirements. Also providing that checklist to tenants in town. So we're working right now on that safe housing checklist that tenants can take when they go look at new units in town and say, hey, I just want to note, whether or not this unit meets my expectations for safety. So kind of equipping people with tools that may be helpful for dealing with some of the safe housing issues we hear of in town. And then there is also a work plan item for our department to create a safe housing strategic plan. Really, the idea behind this right now is more of a strategic plan for us to use internally of how we will build out a safe housing program. So that might include, we will go talk to Cal Poly students at the beginning of the year during their, housing meetings they have. We will send out a mailer once a year to people on how to be a good tenant. We will integrate some of these things into the business license process, so just having a standard set of things that we are going to do, or checklists that we can create to further strengthen the safe housing program. Any questions on this? The council did not go as far as to say, explore further rent control, explore further eviction control at this time. They're really kind of focused, I think, on the registry as a next step. But, you know, the conversation wasn't totally closed as well. So, yeah.
For the rental registry, I believe it was noted it was going to be an additional staff member or two to help manage it. How is that going to be paid for?
Yeah, that's a great question. So one of the things that we're going to do with the rental registry study session, and that we did with this study session, was try to outline the impact to resources at the city level. So each section in the staff report that already was published talks about, like, is this a low, medium, or high need? For example, if the city were to adopt local rent stabilization and eviction protection ordinance, we would absolutely need more staff, more legal assistance. So we tried to highlight that for the council and the community to understand, like, what the trade-offs would be. A registry also needs more staff, right? If we're going to be working with thousands of tenants and thousands of landlords to do an annual registration process, like, we will need, as you said, more staff members. And that's a question for the city council to consider if they want to move forward, is how will you accomplish that? A lot of times cities have a per unit registration cost where they support a registry that way. So that's one option. Some cities just support it through the general fund. And so that would be kind of up for policy discussion, is if you want to move forward with this type of registry, this is the impact that this is what you would need to carry that out well. And, you know, where is that trade-off going to happen?
Thank you.
Yep. All right. Now quickly, we spent a lot of time on the WUI code because it's the kind of the biggest code change that we're going to see this year. But as you're all aware, it's time to adopt new building codes and the WUI code adoption. So November 18th, City Council is the first reading for these new codes. Just as a reminder, the City Council went with staff's recommendation, which is to adopt the WUI provisions as is, meaning we are not going above and beyond the kind of minimum required by the state, because we think it's adequate to move us in the right direction for fire safety. And it's already such a big change for the community to get used to these new regulations pertaining to building hardening and defensible space. So we're going to adopt them kind of as required by the state, not go beyond that. There was a last minute change, and Josh, you jump in if I'm getting this wrong, but there's a last minute change at the state fire marshal level. In our conversations last time, we talked about the 2008 date. So we talked about, and this is for building hardening regulations. And we talked about if you're doing an addition or a remodel to a building that was built prior to 2008, you would not need that addition remodel to comply with the new building hardening standards. There was a change at the state level, and you will now need any new construction. So new ADU, new single family home, new multifamily, and any new addition, even if the building was built before 2008, will need to comply. So we've clarified that in this upcoming staff report, but that is different than what the information that we had at the time that we put the last staff report together. With our building codes, we just have kind of two, I would call them minor local amendments that we will be presenting to the city council. Otherwise, we're just kind of readopting all of our local amendments. We're adopting the WUI code. And then so I'll have Josh, the fire marshal, come speak just very briefly about the local amendment being proposed by the fire department. And then Chris is here to discuss a very minor change in how we carry out one of our existing regulations for energy code. So Josh.
Yeah, so real quick, the picture is a 5-story building. You can't tell that it's a 5-story building because of the type of smoke production that's happening here. What is here is a first floor parking garage. This happened in Texas. 19 cars caught on fire due to an EV failure, charging failure, and it overran the sprinkler system. So what we have been doing for any of the S2 parking garages. We've been asking that they increase the sprinkler density to an extra hazard 2 sprinkler over the parking spots that are affected with EV charging only, not the whole system, just over the parking spots, so that this type of thing does not happen and overwhelm a parking structure. Multiple people were trapped in this building because of the smoke production. The damage to the building was actually very minimal. And so a more robust sprinkler system will avoid that on EV charging stations. We've already been requiring it for about 6 different parking structures within the city. And we do have other things built in if an existing structure cannot meet the demand that an EH2 needs. We have other contingency plans built into the amendments. We're just moving forward with more of a public safety and a fire safety aspect with that sprinkler system.
And that's for chargers that are level 3 or 4.
Yep.
So not 1 or 2 level chargers. So 3 or 4, which is kind of beyond what's currently required. So it would be opting into those higher level chargers. If you're in a structure like this, then around those chargers, you would just need different sprinkler design. Okay, Chris, you want to touch briefly on your?
Sure. I'm Chris Reed, Sustainability Manager. The 2025 Energy Code for new construction has a lot of new provisions in it. I won't spend our time together talking about that. We'll note that 3C Ren has something called the Energy Code Coach. They also provide on-demand and in-person training. So if you want to send your staff that way, they can brief you on the current energy code requirements. The additions and alterations portion of the energy code is effectively unchanged. And since we have a local amendment for major additions and alterations, we're proposing to bring that forward so it lives in the new energy code. We are changing currently the threshold for compliance with that program is a square footage based threshold. We had a study session with council and showed why that was challenging both for applicants and building counter staff. So we're proposing changing that threshold to a project valuation threshold. We'd always been looking at projects about $200,000 or more as sort of triggering these efficiency standards. And so it would be just naming it as such, creating a $200,000 threshold. There's some minor electric readiness requirements in the existing policy, and we're also cleaning up the thresholds under which those apply to be a $100,000 project or more from what was frankly a pretty convoluted way of identifying if people should comply or not. So the policy in its entirety is just proposing to bring it through. We're proposing to bring the policy in its entirety through and just change those thresholds for, again, simplicity and compliance. The REACH codes that are applying to new development right now will no longer be in effect when we adopt the new energy code. Unfortunately, the changes have been large enough energy code that we can't just bring it forward. We need additional analysis by the California Energy Commission, which is forthcoming. So any possible amendments to the energy code in the context of new construction will have additional outreach in the next year and will likely come to council next summer with some potential ideas for them to adopt that would then be enforced in the following calendar year, if any.
So thank you. That's kind of our brief overview of building code. The staff report should be published already because this is for next week. So if you have any other questions and you want to take a look at that and you want to contact Fire Marshal Daniel or Chris or myself, if you have questions, please let us know. But otherwise, again, I think the big focus is we tried to really minimize any other local amendments because of the changes that are coming down from the state related to fire. We just really want people to be able to focus on that. And if you have questions online and want to raise your virtual hand, Lala will let me know. And she can interrupt me at any point. Any questions about building code? And I think I'm sure all of you are aware of the state law that has essentially frozen a lot of our ability to make local changes to building code as it relates to residential units for the next 6 years. So you will likely be seeing just fewer local changes in order to stabilize the code so that it's more predictable and, hopefully facilitate projects moving faster through the pipeline. All right, now I'll turn it over to Brian Nelson to talk briefly about the engineering standards update.
Yeah, thanks, Timmy. Brian Nelson, City Engineer with our Public Works Department, just here to give an overview of what's occurring with our 2025 City Standards Update. So just general high level, what do our standards provides general guidelines and requirements for design and construction of city-led projects, as well as public improvements implemented via private development work. Generally, we're looking for quality and consistency, long-term durable infrastructure that does not require significant maintenance for as long as possible, so that our public resources aren't expended on ongoing maintenance activities to the level we can control. It also governs our relationships with contractors via encroachment permits, working hour restrictions, for instance, work on holidays being restricted, downtown work within the holiday period being restricted as well. So we want to make sure when we're doing work that it's not impacting the public negatively. Looking at kind of oversight of the standards, a lot of the updates that we do are kind of led through our external facing departments. So departments that develop capital projects, but also oversee and review private development work. So Public Works is the primary driver through my department, as well as our maintenance team. Utilities puts out capital projects for wastewater and water, storm drain work, and also review private development plans. Community development engaged group, they review and intake your designs and look for conformance with standards. And then we have our stakeholder departments who provide insight for overview of our standards and provide suggestions for modification. Of course, we also work with external consultants, those that you work with, provide insight and comments, as well as contractors who do work in the field. So we try to keep our ears open to suggestions and input as we look towards our future updating. So how do we determine what needs revising? These are kind of a quick bullet list of things that we look for. The specs, the front end of the standards refers to Caltrans. So by updating our local document, we refer to the most current version of Caltrans. So Caltrans is frequently updating their requirements for paving, for concrete and other things. So by bringing ourselves current, we make it more available, more common with other communities in the area, and hopefully achieve cost efficiencies, not just for our projects, but for private development as well. And then we always see, keep it on that slide. Changes to state and federal laws impact our documents, constructability issues. So inspection is key in this. Sometimes we run into challenges in the field, so we'd want to make improvements there. And then we get our internal requests based on our maintenance teams as another example. So I think of the standard spec, it's a large document. I think of it in like thirds. The first third, which is actually about half of the document itself, is the standard specs. So our 2020 standards reference the 2015 Caltrans spec. This 2025 update will reference the 2024 Caltrans spec. So there's really 9 years of Caltrans updates we're incorporating, which basically require materials, construction processes, acceptance for work that occurs in the field. Just some major highlights here for you guys on what Caltrans updated. What we've updated is our concrete spec, our asphalt concrete spec, paving essentially, to allow for recycled aggregates that permits, some broader availability of recycled materials, which should reduce costs for paving. And then Caltrans specs what's called super pave, which is something that's manufactured by local plants. By allowing super pave, there's more competitive bidding potential for paving work for city projects but also for private projects. Another couple highlights is Caltrans updated their electrical specs, so we've made some modifications there that impacts like traffic signals and power for traffic signals. Local infrastructure, that's our local document. That's not in Caltrans, that's water, sewer, storm drain, materials, and installation requirements. Minimal modifications there. Primary one I've noted here was just changing the notification requirements for sewer lateral tie-ins. And then within section 73, that's update was primarily for mission style sidewalk, the concrete coloring. You may have noticed some different color of the downtown sidewalks, maybe some more terracottas, some pinks. The suppliers weren't able to manufacture a consistent mix, and so we've remedied that. And what you'll see in the standard is the sidewalk color, and they have it in front of 919 Palm. It's more the brown mission style sidewalks, like the kind that most people like. Next slide, please. The other third of the document is the uniform design criteria. That's where you and your engineers kind of, determine your project, the regulations and requirements. So that's for new infrastructure or replacement of existing. It also, by reference, incorporates a lot of other federal and state requirements that I've listed here. Just an example, and the WUI code is one of those new ones. So with the update to 1010, we're implementing references to WUI code. It's a few sentences really for fire lane access requirements within wildland urban interface areas. We're also providing some language in there for requirements, for state requirements, of implementing trash was enclosure requirements. Next slide. We do get develop come through that has, so South Broad Street Place on South Broad, where it's stamped concrete border, gray concrete with that low strip. And then a couple other here, we've implemented hydration stations throughout city parks, so we're standardizing that detail. And then a state requirement for micro trenching is incorporated. The state's requiring communities to allow for micro trenchings, which is like very shallow, thin trench sections to allow for expansion of fiber optic broadband networks within communities. So there's only 5 new ones here. Next slide. We do have a long list of existing standards that we've touched. Sometimes they're just minor clarifications as we get input from our maintenance teams. I've noted a few here that are more significant changes to existing standards. That's the street tree species list has been swapped out based on input from our city arborist and review and approval through the tree committee and city council. So look out for that one. That's changed. Some input we've gotten on manhole designs was implemented in the standards. We had some issues at Avila Ranch where the 6-inch wall manholes weren't readily available. So we had a design exception request come in requesting a 5-inch thick wall through a different supplier. We found that met equivalency, so we've implemented that in the standards, which should provide options for competitive bidding, potentially lower costs even with broadening the list of suppliers. We have updated a tree well standard to allow for the rubberized mat tree wells that you see in the downtown around existing trees. The trash container detail has changed. We're now requiring big belly trash cans consistent with what you see downtown, which helps keep trash contained, reduces risk of vandalism and overspill, and actually it notifies maintenance teams when the trash can's full and needs emptying. And then there's another minor update, I think, to the pathway lighting, just with vendor changes and equipment availability to reflect what's out there currently. So with that, just kind of quick synopsis here. With things that are existing, we have a number of those, either private development or city-led projects that are referencing the 2020 standards. For the most part, if you guys are near completion with those designs, they've been through a review process, we don't anticipate a lot of need to revise or redesign for 2025 standards. We'll look for areas that conflict with our 2025 standards. We'll work with Gabe on any constraints we may have, but anticipate those that are far along should be able to continue, since we have our adoption plan for December 2nd for the 2025 update. And then with that, we'll post the list of everything that's been impacted or changed, even minor changes, so that you guys can have a quick view of what to look out for. And then with this being a 5 years since the 2020 update, we're going to try to get back on a 2-year cycle to keep it more current and updated. We found ourselves delayed with this update because of COVID and staffing changes. So it feels like it's been a while since we've updated. It really has, but in terms of what is changing, it's more iterative in nature. With that, if you guys have any questions, I would answer.
So tell me they took the ficus off the street tree list.
I believe so.
Oh, good. Finally.
Yeah, or reduce the percentage. Yeah, it's destructive.
Any questions online? No? Okay. Thank you, Brian. Appreciate it. Okay, sewer lateral program changes. Chris.
Okay,
take it away.
Chris Lehman, I'm the Deputy Director, Wastewater Utilities Department. And ever popular private sewer lateral programs, I have probably a more controversial item. If you could go back a slide. We're going to be continuing this conversation next April. This is in relation to the private sewer lateral offset program. 4 items that I'm presenting today were all presented to City Council back on August 19th. And the major item, item number 1, we're going to, like I said, we're going to continue this with another study session next April 7th, 2026. So not going to be focusing on that today, but wanted to spotlight that will be coming later on. So go to next slide. The items we are going to be bringing to council on December 2nd. The first item is just an update to our general plan, the wastewater and water element of the general plan. And this is in relation to the capacity constrained areas map. And then this is the map that is our wastewater collection system. It's identifying areas in the collection system that have capacity limitations. And this is the underlying data set that drives the offset program. So new development that comes in, intensification, need to find ways to offset that new additional flow, and that relates to the offset program. So no changes coming to council on December 2nd related to the offset program. The update is going to be an updated map, which areas are capacity constrained. We gave an update back in August, but the recap of that is we did an updated flow study of the system and mapped out current capacities both during dry weather and wet weather flows. We get additional water into the system through breaks in the system, and that additional storm flow has to be treated. The major issue with that increased flow is the potential for spills in the system, excuse me. So the item we're bringing forward is the first item is just an update to the map. So current data, we want to utilize the most current data set that we have, and that will result in a new map. The other item I wanted to spotlight in that we're not going to be revising the offset program, but what we are going to be doing is in the interim leading up to April is trying to find ways to make the program easier to carry out, both on the developer side and on the city side. And so something that we're going to be launching in January is an outreach program. And I'll go over a couple other items that'll help support this. But with that updated map, our map is published on the city's website. The general challenge that we've heard from the community is it's difficult to find these offsets. And so something that we're going to be launching in January is a voluntary opt-in program that says, you know, you have a bad lateral. Would you like to opt into a bit of a matchmaking service? And if yes, on the city's website, on that map that lists all the conditions of the private sewer laterals, there would be a new symbol that would say this property is opted into the offset program, kind of pre-screened. And that would help anyone looking for wastewater offsets to have a general idea of where to focus first. So if we go to the next slide, We presented this back in August, but just to recap here, this is the existing map of the capacity constrained areas of the wastewater collection system. So 3 areas. This is all based off a prior flow study that was completed in 2012. Next slide. Taking a fast forward 10 years to when we completed the current study. The light teal areas are the former capacity constrained areas in addition to the pink area. Pink area will remain, and the green area is a new area that has been proposed. So if we could skip forward one more slide. This is where we're going to land with the capacity constrained areas. And this map will be published in as a part of the general plan, and it'll be on our website as well. But this is the first item that we'll be bringing on December 2nd to council. It's just an update of the map. And I'll pause there for any questions and have 2 other items to update on that are incentives to help manage this program more effectively. But any questions on the map update? Not a new update. This was presented in August, but we are going to be adopting this update on December 2nd. It's been through Planning Commission approval on October 22nd. And so next step is to do the formal update. Okay, next slide. The other item that we presented in August, again, is, how do we accelerate improving these capacity constrained issues that we have in town? And one area that we've heard is, and that we agree with, is just this is a data game. Where do we focus limited resources? And so staff's recommendation that we'll be bringing for approval on December 2nd is the creation of a new rebate program that would apply for camera inspections of sewer laterals in these capacity constrained areas. So any property could apply for this rebate. It would apply to residential, commercial, multifamily, any property type within these capacity constrained areas. And rebate would be set to $350, which is pretty close to the average price that we're hearing that a camera inspection costs for the work. So ideally, it would cover the whole cost, and anybody in these areas would qualify for that rebate. So the hope is that we would help offset the cost of existing inspections that are required, but I think more so hoping to incentivize voluntary inspections. And then again, just increasing this data set that we have in these areas that we know are problematic. Next updated item on the rebate front is related to the private sewer lateral replacements. So existing rebate structure is citywide. Any single family home replacing a lateral would be eligible for a $4,000 rebate. What staff is proposing as an update to this program is expanding eligibility, again, kind of focusing in the most problematic areas of the system. Those 2 capacity constrained areas, any property type would be eligible for this rebate. So that would expand to commercial properties, to multifamily properties, any properties within those 2 zones that we know we have capacity issues. And could do next slide. I'm not sure if I have much left. That's the general updates. We have a map update. We have an update to the existing replacement rebate. And then we have a new rebate proposed to hopefully get more data on existing lateral conditions. One of the big battles that staff have is there's just a large percentage of unknown conditions in the system. About 65% of private sewer laterals, we just don't know the condition. And so again, it's a data game. We want to be most efficient and targeted with the source of the issues. So hoping to get more data through this new rebate program, and then hoping to focus more proactive maintenance on these private systems that often get overlooked until you have a failure or a spill. But I'll pause there for any questions.
So Does the $4,000 rebate, can you apply that towards, like if we have to replace laterals for offsetting on new development,
Yes,
you can apply it?
that would apply.
Does that go to the homeowner or?
And it would have to go to the property owner. And so you'd be, you would get some sort of arrangement together where if you did the work, you would get refunded through the property owner. But the way we have to set up the program for various reasons, it has to go to the property owner. And then we're actually required to collect the W-2 from the property owner, and it helps us on the accounting side. But those replacements would qualify for the rebate.
So you're collecting a W-2, are you sending them like a 1099 or something for the rebate?
I believe so. I think that's the next step.
Well, it's gonna be difficult for them to give it back when they're paying a tax on the rebate, they're supposed to reimburse that.
Right. That's good. That's a fair point.
That's gonna be a problem.
Question back, John?
So a rebate is an income?
That
1099?
that's what we've landed on. That's a new requirement that we just started collecting actually fall of 2023 with the updated rebate amount that our finance department identified that we had for bookkeeping purposes. We have to collect the W-2. So that is a new requirement. As far as the back end and the 1099, I could probably get back to you on that.
And then what if you guys keep saying homeowner, but in some of these cases,
Property owner.
So if the property owner is also the developer, that's still a rebate. And
Yes.
that's not an issue.
Mm-hmm.
Chris, if I could.
Did come out of this group, especially in that August meeting of, hey, what if the city was to cover that inspection cost so that folks, even if they weren't selling their house or were interested in their lateral condition, could have some better understanding of what condition the lateral was in, and that could feed into the matchmaking program. So I want to say thanks to this group for raising that. That was a good suggestion.
That's a good point. And then one other point of clarification on that. I think one thing that we heard from council and community is great. You want to incentivize an inspection to be performed. Are these voluntary inspections putting property owners at risk? Are they going to be required to do something? And at this point, staff's recommendation is no. That could potentially change in the future as we revisit, the offset program and really focusing on the source of greatest improvement and risk. But at the current state, our recommendation is just a voluntary inspection. And then staff is hoping that would lead to a voluntary replacement. So starting small, trying to incentivize action through these rebates. No.
Okay.
Not currently.
Mandatory inspection, but not replacement.
That's been discussed, but currently no, it's just a notification only. We have discussed that as an option, kind of ignoring, you have a data set, bad laterals exist. What do you do with it? And I think that's when we're going to be coming back in April to really dig into that issue.
Any questions online? Okay.
I have one more
Yeah.
question on the W-2. So if it's a corporation, I don't think that you have to issue a 1099. I guess I would keep that in mind, that if it's the developer paying for it directly and they're a corp, and maybe you guys could consider in that vein cutting the check directly to the contractor doing the work to kind of save the homeowner from getting a random 1099, because I feel like a person that does a job and gets their taxes taken out of it probably wouldn't know what to do with a $4,000 1099 from the city.
That's a fair point. We
Yeah,
can-
I don't, you know what I mean? Like, I can't imagine that like
Yeah,
some little old lady on a fixed income is like, would even know what to do with that. So you guys should probably be considerate of kind of, and again, if you can pay it directly to the contractor doing the work, that would even be probably easier and better.
got it. Yeah, that's a fair point.
Okay, thank you. All right, wrapping up. So just a reminder for everyone, we've tried to schedule out the next meetings. I know they're next year, so no one's gonna remember this, but we will pepper you with emails. We have it on the Developers Roundtable website. And we will let you know if there's any last minute changes, and we're gonna try to keep meeting in this room and obviously also still have the Zoom option. I just wanted to highlight a few things. We already talked about some of these, but December 2nd, you have heard very exciting sewer lateral map update item at council. November 18th, building codes, which we already discussed, and then December 2nd, also an update to the historic preservation ordinance and context statement. This is the result of phase 1 of a work plan item that was in our work plan for last budget cycle. And so essentially what we're doing, we've been working with Page and Turnbull. So they're a historic consultant firm and architecture firm to kind of clean up our historic preservation ordinance, clarify, make things more clear for people. I think there was some identification of issues through things we had in our ordinance that aren't necessarily industry best practice, and also things that caused confusion when someone wanted to do something to a property. So really the intent of this is to, one, redo the historic context statement, which is kind of like the baseline guidance document for determining, you know, the context through which we identify what's historic in our community. And two, to kind of clean up the ordinance. So this staff report will be out soon. It already went to the CHC and the Planning Commission. So there are staff reports out that explain the proposed changes. And then phase 2 will be an update to the historic inventory. So that's the properties that are included in the historic inventory of the city. So please take a look at that. If you're interested at all, you can watch the old meetings from Planning Commission. And that will be December 2nd. And then, I'm so sorry. On January 20th, I think an item that's of interest to this group always, and we will talk about it, is the legislative update. So this is when we talk about all the housing bills that have come down, other bills. There's some really interesting housing bills and streamlining bills that we should all talk about. There are interesting kind of commercial related bills related to restaurant development that we should talk about. But this is the first time the council's really hearing from staff, all of them. So housing plus all other types of legislation that would impact the business of the city. So it's a great time to weigh in and also just hear more. And then what you'll see is that annually after we have this meeting, we have the planning staff come forward with any necessary changes that we need to make to come into compliance with things that have changed in state law. Usually it's like clean up things or amendments to the ADU ordinance or other housing regulations. And so we do our best to try to do like a cleanup ordinance at that time. In the past, we've also done some things that are kind of beyond cleanup, but are things that we see as low hanging fruit to facilitate more development. Like, for example, one of the things we did last year was to remove the commercial requirement in mixed use zones for projects that are affordable housing projects, because in talking with Hasel and Peoples, it was clear that it was very difficult for them to finance commercial portions of the project, and there was no way for them to get out of that requirement, so we removed it. So it's a good time to bring up things like that. I also, beyond what's here, but I have a work plan item where I'll be assembling a focus group of architects, developers, interested parties to identify kind of what are the barriers to development and infill, specifically focused on downtown, but we can kind of talk about infill wherever. And so if that's something you're interested in being a part of, I'd love for you to send me an email. I'm sure many people online and in the room may want to be a part of that, but I think would be a really great time for us just to have a conversation that could tee up some future changes, code changes or policy programmatic changes to help kickstart some infill development. Any questions? I think that, oh, my favorite, holiday closure reminder. This is, I think, maybe the 5th year we've done something like this, but just a reminder to everyone. So the counter is closed to walk-ins during this time. We still have staff that will be working. It's not like no one is working at this time. So you can contact the staff member that you'd like to speak to, and we'll take appointments. You know, if someone's working, they'll take appointments to meet with you. They'll still be responding to emails. But we will be people can go on vacation. They'll be taking time during this time. So please plan ahead. We will have inspection services available throughout this, obviously not on the actual holidays, but during this time, there will be an inspector working. But if you think you need an inspection, please let us know earlier than you maybe would. We also have, Trevor is going out on a leave starting any time now. And so he will be gone through the holidays. And so we'll be down staffing wise on the inspection team. Sean is also going out on leave. So we've actually brought Dawn Wright back to the counter temporarily. So take advantage of that. If you want to talk to Don, he's over there right now. He's very happy to talk to you about anything you want to talk about. We're very, very lucky that he was able to come back and that we were able to bring him back. But that's really going to be the way we can kind of make it through both Sean and Trevor being out at the same time. It's going to be challenging for us. So let us know if you're having issues or you need to have something. Let us know as early as you can. Talk to Vanessa, talk to myself. We also please submit building permit applications early, especially if you're very concerned about getting in before the code cycle changes. And so talk to Vanessa now. And I believe she said if you can get it in the Monday before the 24th, that we can generate a receipt for you and have you pay to officially be in. Anything after that Monday, it's going to be case by case as we can. It's not guaranteed. So plan early, please.
That's Monday, the 22nd.
The 22nd. Thank you. Any questions? Okay. Made it. So now we'll open it up, questions, comments, other things people want to talk about. Anyone online? Come on, guys.
I'll start.
Yes, John.
Really?
Does anybody else, or we could go. We were at an HBA breakfast yesterday and the county presented on their new ADU ordinance. And I don't know if you guys are tracking that, but basically they've said one way or the other, you're going to get to 3 ADUs. And so why are we fighting this at every corner? And so the county's going to unilaterally approve 3 ADUs up to 1,200 square feet per single family lot, period, with a 25 to 45 foot height limit. And so what they've done is they've circumvented all of the planning labor that goes into analyzing whether they're within line with state code or not. What would be the process for us to do something like that? Like who would we have to talk to be like, hey, this is a really good idea. It's what the state wants, and it's going to cut down on planning review labor by not forcing you guys to have to look at every comma and colon.
Yes.
Yeah. What does that look like for us helping push forward a policy like that?
Yeah, great question. We'll take a look at that. I don't know, David, have you looked at the counties? Not yet. Okay. So we'll take a look at that. I think that's a good question, John. I think the kind of official answer is city council directs the work of the departments and the staff, right? So it being a work plan item so like right now we have a work plan item to create an ADU guide, an SB9 guide, because it's just confusing, but that doesn't change any of the regulations, right? And we actually just redid our ADU ordinance. We talked about coming back and potentially making some more changes based on what we heard. So it could be wrapped up into a conversation like that. I think the best answer would be council directs staff to go just completely overhaul ADU regulations in the city and gives us some basic parameters, like we want you to allow XYZ, figure out the best way to do it. Beyond that, with like any updates to this ADU ordinance that we have now, it's not gonna be that holistic. It'll be like fixing little things we see here and there. I think another option, and this is further out probably than you want to hear, but is the housing element. I mean, you could absolutely, through the housing element process, integrate a policy or program in there that says the city will, and then, in year whatever, 2028 or the first year of the housing element, revamp the ADU ordinance to allow XYZ, right? So that commits the city in the state's eyes to making that change, as a tool that we would use to reach our RENA numbers.
I mean, but I think that the housing element discussion is, you could say the same thing for zoning. You could just upzone R2 and say you're doing the same thing, right? I think that the hammer with the ADU is, because it's state law, it feels like it's a more readily available thing to change as part of the zoning code without waiting to go through a full-blown update, right?
Yeah.
Like, obviously you could update and allow 8-story buildings, like that's, right, not that you would, but I think that's the key for the ADU, is that it's supposed to, it feels like from the state's perspective, it's supposed to circumvent the cumbersome process of those, hey, in 2032, we're gonna allow 7-story buildings, like that's not soon enough.
Totally, so I would say, housing element is one way if you have patience, otherwise it would be getting the council to direct staff, or the next time we open up the ADU ordinance, because it's possible that with some of these state laws, we will need to amend parts of the ADU ordinance, and that would be a time to have this perspective. You have like a study session with council first, say, do you even want us to go down this road? And if they say yes, then we know we have permission, we come back with an ordinance. Otherwise, we don't know that there's political support for that, if that makes sense.
And that county process took a year and a half, 2 years.
It did.
Yeah.
I just I want to frame one thing. It's not about patience. It's about, if we need more housing, and this is a way that we can circumvent a more cumbersome zoning process, that's a quicker way to more housing. So just understand, it's not a patience thing. It's like, again, if we're gonna say housing emergency, then we should always be leading with, how do we have, what's the quickest and easiest way to more housing?
Yeah.
So.
And I've seen some communities, and I have actually will get a kind of better designed, more usable project with essentially the same intensity of development. I mean, so what the state law has essentially done is pushed so far that it makes more sense for cities to kind of overhaul their own regulations and to kind of take back control in a way that actually makes more sense and is easier to understand than constantly trying to shove things into local and state law at the same time. So I hear that. I think it's a really good point. We'll take a look at the county regulations. That's interesting. Anything else anyone wants to mention, bring up? Yeah, Aaron.
Just a quick
Question about, and this, you might not have an answer for this, but overnight parking by parking pass in downtown.
Yeah.
Is there any product or policy right now that allows for that?
Like on the street or in the?
I know the parking garages have overnight parking, but that's the only thing that I'm aware of that allows for overnight parking.
Aaron?
I'm trying to think about that, if there's any that I can think of right now. I mean, are you specifically addressing it more from construction standpoint on it, or just?
We're leasing the arson right now.
Okay.
And we sold out of our parking, and tenants are interested in their options. And right now, the existing parking structures are pretty far away. The new parking structure, once it opens, will be helpful, but they're like, where do you want me? I'll pay for it, but where do you want me to park overnight?
Yeah, you can't do it downtown because they're sweeping the streets.
Yeah.
We've been through that.
Yeah. So I mean,
All of it has a 3 to 5 o'clock.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that someone got a ticket and they're like, well, tell me what you want me to do. And we don't have a good answer.
No parking regs. I think this is the trade-off we're gonna see. And I think one of the point of the new structure, which doesn't help you now, but was to provide more capacity downtown so that as we get more residential units, which hopefully we do, we have somewhere to at least provide that parking as we provide less parking in each project. But yeah, you're in kind of a pickle right now. I think Aaron, I would point you to Aaron's team.
Yeah, send me an email with the specifics and let me see if we can, location specific, find some kind of solution that might work.
Yeah, that's a great question.
Yeah, thanks for raising that.
But yeah, that was one of the stated objectives, I believe, of the new parking structure downtown, is to kind of open up availability of parking for people who need it, who want to reside downtown and don't have parking provided in their building. So that will be a big game changer, hopefully.
And I had one other one if
Yeah.
there's nobody else.
Yeah, then Damien, go ahead.
House keys.
Yeah,
So just because, again, very specific situation, but I've heard other people complain as well. We've been available to rent 2 very low income units now for almost 6 months. So we got C of O at the beginning of June.
Yeah.
House keys has provided 2 candidates with both said no. And apparently there's a handful of others that have been checked and we can't get a hold of anyone. And so it's just like, it's like a question, like, is there someone we should be reaching out to? Because we're trying.
have you been working with David?
I have not.
Okay, so I would say if anyone needs to rent or sell an affordable unit, start with David. So David Amini for people who can't see on the screen. He manages the program and he is kind of the interface with House Keys, and we are trying to stay on top of it as much as very possible. So now he has weekly meetings with them to check, like now we know which are the projects in the line, what's going on with this one, who's involved. So absolutely reach out to David. Great question. And I think to build off of that, we know there are challenges that we've seen. Just, the rental units are a little easier to facilitate. That's just the way it is in every community I've talked to, ones I've worked in. There's just less paperwork you need to do, less vetting, and people are a little less hesitant, I think, to commit to renting a low-income unit than to commit to purchasing one. Obviously, that's a bigger deal. But please reach out to us as early as possible, like even before your building is done, and let us know, hey, we think we'll be ready to rent X date, because it takes us a little lead time, and we can start just polling people and processing them already with a potential move-in date. So we can get people set up before the project is even open. But I will say, if you're thinking of projects and you're vacillating between for sale and for rent for the affordable units, and I know sometimes it's just a market decision, but the rental ones are much easier to fill and to handle and to find people for. We had, I don't know if Travis Fuentes is on the call at all, but we had 9 units, moderate rate for sale units in Rigetti Ranch, and cannot find buyers because with interest rates and HOA costs baked in, like it's not really a great deal. And the moderate rate income segment is a funky one, very low is generally easier, but with the pricing of the units, it's been very, very difficult for us to even just find people that are interested. So telling us early is super helpful, but we are trying to stay on top of House Keys. And then the very last thing I'll say about House Keys is we are reworking the way that a sale works when it's what do we call it? A resale, I'm sorry. So if it's a developer, brand new unit, you're selling it, goes through our general House Keys process, talk to David early. If it's a resale, so if you hear of someone in the community, hey, I bought an affordable unit 10 years ago and I'm ready to move out for some reason, we are going to be creating a process that looks a little more like a standard sales process where House Keys is only involved in kind of the vetting of the applicant, but not in the sale of the unit or identifying, like it will be on the realtor to be identifying potential buyers and things like that. So we're trying to move more toward the general market to make it similar to market rate units to relieve some of the complexity of that type of sale.
Yeah, from a feedback standpoint,
I avoid for sale affordable at all costs.
Yeah. It's very difficult.
And it was awful.
So we like rental, we like all of them, but rental is much easier. And in the city's perspective, you know, that we deed restrict it for 40 to 55 years in general, you know, and so it's a rental unit that can be used over and over again as people cycle through. With the for sale, either we restrict it to subsequent sales, which is hard to find that person, or we do an equity share, but then we lose the unit. You know, the city gets a little bit of equity from the sale, but we lose that unit out of our inventory, which we don't want, so. Damien?
I just wanted to touch on sewer laterals, and I've been working with the utilities department, and I think it's a great step to amend the maps, but also just wanted to, hopefully there's more discussion between now and April, because just using my math, using the city's numbers, a failed lateral flows 23 times as much water in a rain event as a good condition new lateral. And so I think really focusing on how to solve the problem with regards to, you know, dealing with the low hanging fruit, I think is important. And I think certainly from a developer discussion with the offset program and all that kind of stuff, it seems like we should all kind of have a say in, you know, looking at the numbers and have at least a say in what we think is an equitable solution.
Definitely. We have at least, I know, one meeting coming up, and we'll have probably a few workshops with this group before April.
Cool. Anyone online? All right. Anything else? Cool. Please email me if you'd like to be part of the working group for infill. It doesn't kick off for a while, but I'm trying to assemble the group of people who are interested in talking about this topic. So thank you, everyone. Nice to see you all. Stay dry.